Thank you.
So we're currently live, and we'll see if we get some attendees coming in. Usually give it a couple of minutes.
Okay.
And I will also share.
I don't see, is John here?
Not
Yep.
yet.
Okay.
Yeah, John's on screen.
Oh, he is.
I
Okay.
am here.
Hi, John.
Oh, there he is.
There you are. Very good.
Okay, we currently have 4 attendees, and we can get the meeting underway. This is the meeting of the Clean Energy Commission, March 10th, 7:30 p.m. I'm just going to read a little primer. Consistent with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning gatherings of more than 10 people, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Public may not physically attend the meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time. In the event that a live transmission proves unworkable for any reason, an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the meeting will be made available on the city's website as soon as possible. So the floor is yours, Madam Chair.
I am Candace Wheeler, the chair of the Gloucester Clean Energy Commission. Very glad to be back at meetings after almost a year without meetings, thanks to the COVID epidemic. The first thing I would like to do is to call our meeting to order. Well, maybe I just did. This is our March 10th meeting in 2021. And the first thing I'd like to do is to introduce the members of the Clean Energy Commission and our esteemed colleague from the Community Development Department. As I said, I'm Candace Wheeler, the chairman, and our members are Deborah Darby, John Moskal, Sam Zirgabel, Linda Brayton, and Linda Saunders. And the planning director, Greg Catamartori, is here to brief us tonight on what has been going on in this sort of energy management area of Gloucester's activities over the past year. Before we move on, I would like to suggest that we delay approval of meeting minutes until our next meeting, just because we really haven't had time to pursue what might be ready for a vote. So unless I hear any objection to that, I am going to pass over the approval of meeting minutes pending our next meeting. Anybody have a problem with that? I don't see.
Just one question.
Sure.
The November 2019 minutes were originally circulated the end of February. If everybody needs to get those again, I can send them back out because I never got responses.
Linda, I would like to suggest that that would be terrific if you could do
Okay.
that after that long gap of time. I think.
Yeah,
that
I would say I have no idea what happened yesterday, much less last week.
Okay, yeah, it gets a little confusing with the years at this point. So
It
I'll
does.
go ahead and recirculate those.
Thank you very much.
All right.
All right. I'm going to pass over the general discussion, member reports on conferences and meetings, if any, simply because it's been a year since anybody, had a great deal to report on that subject, unless I hear an objection from any of the members. And therefore, let us start with item 1 on our agenda. Greg Catamartori will give us updates since the last meeting that we had back in February of 2020.
Okay.
Greg, the floor is yours.
Sure. Okay, so I'm gonna go. I have a presentation that kind of outlines a bunch of the bullets that you've identified. I'm going to take one out of order, which is 1B. We are in the midst of trying to backfill the staff planner position. Whenever you potentially meet again, even if it's in 2 weeks, I hope to have good news at that point. We've conducted a search and we've narrowed it down to finalists, and hopefully we'll have some good news within a week or so. So that's an update on that. I'm going to stop sharing the agenda, and I will share a little PowerPoint presentation that just keeps me organized for this evening. Everyone can see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So under the headings, I kind of lumped them into a little bit of a discussion around municipal aggregation, the kind of broad range of climate change adaptation, mitigation, and resilience. And that includes green communities, infrastructure, planning, and policy. So a couple of updates in each of those areas, and then finish off, which is actually item number 2, property assessed clean energy and where that stands. So just to remind everybody, we are in a municipal aggregation program with Direct Energy. Good Energy was our aggregator or our broker. We're in year 3 of 3. So the contract will term in December of this year. And so we have, all the information on the program is available at gloucester-cea.com. And just to give folks a little bit of a snapshot of where we currently are in that this graphic, which is also available on that same website. Our current rate between November through April, so just coming up on that winter rate, the base rate of National Grid is at 12.388 cents per kilowatt hour, and the negotiated rate with Direct Energy for the Gloucester Local Green, which was the most popular rate that folks went for, is out competing that currently, and again across the 3-year contract, it's been set at 11.085 cents per kilowatt. So that's the good news for the winter months, which typically over the past two winter seasons, that's when folks are seeing the most savings if compared to if they were on the basic rate with National Grid. And then in the summer months, again, it's kind of a toss up to see how close National Grid's rate is either to the rates that has been negotiated, or if it's potentially less than that. So if you look at the performance of the program over 2 years running, across all accounts, and this is residential accounts as well as small commercial and industrial accounts that also could have been added. There's been a total savings in the program of about $1.126 million, or around $113 per account. Because of that adder of having an additional 5% renewable energy in the program, that's resulted in a savings of about 8.3 million kilowatts, which is almost equates to the production of the turbines on an annual basis. And then you can also see a graphic of enrollments over the life of the program. Again, that steep rise with the opt-out program that initiated, the program itself, and it's fluctuated a bit. Some of these increases may have been that somebody had termed from a alternate supply agreement, and then they were then kind of scooped up back through the program, because otherwise they would have been put on the basic rate with National Grid. It does look like over time, everybody's maybe using a lot more energy in their households than in past years because of being kept within it for a period of time. So we are starting to see a little bit of a decline in enrollment, although it's fairly steady. And again, this could be the simple side effect of new energy agreements that people are, or solicitations that folks are seeing that are out competing the program. And again, someone can leave the program at any time and opt out. So that's kind of a summary of that. And I don't know if Candace, if this was a point where you wanted to talk about a little bit about the potential for a new bid or regional aggregation. I think many of the members, certainly a few of them, I've seen your faces in some of the meetings conducted with MAPC to look at the potential options for a regional aggregation. But it does seem like, it's very timely to start the discussion about whether or not we would like to continue to move on with reinitiating a new aggregation at the term of the current program. And it looks like John's got his hands raised.
Okay.
I do, Greg. I'm just wondering if the, the enrollment numbers and the slippage in them over the 2020 period are tied to real estate transactions, or people, is that people getting new houses and coming in and stuff like that? Have you guys tried to do any sort of analytics on who's leaving and why?
That would be a good question for Good Energy. This comes from a dashboard feed that I have access to. So I see the numbers. I think some of it is potentially choice. I'm not sure if it's tied to turnover. That's a good question in terms of whether or not a transaction results in removal from the program, or whether or not it runs and somebody still has the option to opt out. So that's a good question. I'm not,
Okay.
but we could find that out.
I mean, it seems pretty stable to me. I mean, we're well over 10,000
Yep.
accounts and have stayed that way. So I think people are, in general, pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I think particularly in the winter months, with that, we've had the last winter month, it was more than 2 cents a kilowatt in terms of the program rate versus the National Grid Basic Service rate. So, I mean, that's a savings right there. I will say I have fielded a lot of calls over the course of the 2 years with just trying to help people understand their billing and the difference between transmission, distribution, and other charges versus just the supply piece. So it's a complicated bill and you're trying to figure out what's going on. One of the things I usually have people try to look very carefully at is there's usually a graphic of how you've been billing over the previous several months to see if there's a spike associated there, if there's something going on, or typically transitions. I've spoken to folks that are saying, I don't understand why this is so high. It's the summer, we don't have air conditioning. I'm trying to figure out why it's so high. And I say things like, well, do you have a pool? Well, sure. Is it heated? Of course. So, there's different things that people just, don't think about. And you can also look back on it over a year's basis would be the best way to compare to see if there's some sort of anomaly.
Greg, can I make a quick comment relative to the regional
Absolutely.
aggregation? Okay.
Sure.
The City of Gloucester was really an initiator of a dialogue along with MAPC about the potential for a number of communities to join together in a regional aggregation contract. It could be 2 communities or several or as many as over 20 communities, which is something that has happened down on the South Shore. So MAPC essentially helped us obtain a grant, which was a technical assistance grant for their consulting services to support a multi-community dialogue. We ended up with about 20 communities being involved in the discussion all over the North Shore and beyond. The process of discussion was very useful. MAPC helped the communities that had never done any aggregation before figure out how to essentially launch aggregation by their city council or town meeting process, and to get started on it. And it also created a forum in which we could approach other communities to discuss whether there was a possibility for a joint collaboration. The 1-year assistance grant is basically done at this point, and MAPC has offered to help us get another round of technical assistance through their technical assistance program. And at the moment, they have just begun that effort. So I guess we would say we are hopeful that we will continue to have their support going forward, and they can be a little bit of a matchmaker to help us figure out which communities would be the most advantageous for collaborative agreements. So I think that probably by the time of our next meeting, we'll know whether we have their technical assistance support for another year as this dialogue continues. But even if we don't, we now at least have a full roster of contacts in a whole bunch of different communities, and a way to to go forward and approach others that may be ready to launch into another contract on a timetable that's consistent with ours. As Greg had said, our 3-year contract lapses on December 31st of this year. So we will be in the process of either signing a new individual contract or a new agreement that would bring in another community or other communities to work with us. So that's sort of where the regional discussion stands. If any of the others who have followed those discussions want to add anything, I know Linda Brayton, you have been present at several of those MAP meetings in which multiple communities were present. Linda Saunders, you may also have been. So if any of you want to contribute something, just click your raise your hand button.
Oh, I have my hand raised.
Well, I was at the meeting in Manchester.
Yes, that was our original liftoff.
Right,
And
okay.
since then, there have been a few other gatherings, that have included all of the participating communities. And I'm not sure whether you attended any of
No.
those or not. Okay.
I did
And-
not.
Linda Brayton, have you anything to add there?
Yeah, I actually want to just give a footnote to what was said a little bit earlier.
Sure.
There is on the CEA Gloucester's site an actual little calculator where individuals can go and calculate their rates, their usage and so forth, and what their savings would be. And I did mine and I got savings. So that's something, if we're marketing our program here in whatever form it takes,
Mhm.
good for people to know, especially those that are ready to opt out because they don't understand they saved money.
Mhm.
As far as, I don't know that it's sensible to start this whole discussion tonight, but I did have some thoughts around the idea of pursuing, at least thinking about pursuing our own contract with Good Energy again, just because it's easier. We could add into it an adder so that everybody in the city that's on the program ends up with 100% rather than the 5% basic rate of renewable energy added in. Those are things we could talk about, and it would be not involving DPU. And that's the only way, as far as I understand it, we don't have to go through the whole process all over again. And to me, that's at least something to worry about
Mhm.
in terms of making alliances, because people are really at different places than we are. I think, if I remember correctly, we're the furthest ahead in terms of doing this program.
I think there are a few others who have,
Several maybe is too, yeah. But we're well ahead of a lot of the communities. So, and our contract's running out this year, and we know how fast we all move. Not very. Here's John. Yeah,
yes,
that's
John.
what I had to say. Just as something, that's something that I think is a big issue for us to.
Yeah, I agree with Linda on that. And I think our to-dos here are pretty basic. We've got a contract running out. We've got to figure out where the city is with regard to where they want to go with this, and what kind of input and stuff that we can and should be providing them. And I think our activity ought to be driven by where Greg sees the city going, so we can provide them with an appropriate level of advice. I don't know, do we reopen conversations with Good Energy again on this, or what? And I'm looking to Greg to give the commission some direction in that regard.
Sure. I mean, I guess one of the things that was not super clear is the way that we came into our agreement with Good Energy was through a group procurement, and whether or not that is something that we have to reconsider now that this contract is terming, or whether or not we have the flexibility to just renew with Good Energy to pursue another bid. So that to me is, again, to try to understand what the various options are. If there's, for any reason, that there's a reason that we have to kind of quote unquote bid or put out a bid for the services of an aggregator, that's kind of a critical path issue. And I think it's something that we need to know very quickly because, as you know, the lead to getting to the actual bid process is pretty extensive. And I think to Linda's point as well, my assessment from how things were kind of closing out with the group discussion with other communities, not only was it a hit or miss in terms of where they were, if they were ready to start bidding for an aggregation program, it was also kind of a mismatch in many instances with who their aggregator was. So the two players in the region are really Peregrine and Good Energy, and across the communities there's not perfect parity, and the other piece to consider on top of it is just because there's another community that's interested in joining in a group procurement or a group aggregation, it may not be the most advantageous for the city in terms of the potential buying power, and this is something that I think Stefano or Phil Carr or even John O'Rourke, they're kind of a little bit dicey or a little bit kind of standoffish about saying what it really actually means for for instance, for us to try to partner perhaps with a small town that doesn't have a lot of customers, and what their utilization is like. Obviously, if you had cities, two cities that were in position to do it, that might have a greater impact because of the type of load profile we have. So I think there's a lot of factors. First and foremost is, either going it alone or in a group setting, whether there's a procurement issue. I think that's critical. And then, once that's answered, if there's the desire to perhaps, if it looks like there's an advantage, and maybe that's some of the input we could get from having either Stefano or Phil Carr come to a meeting to talk about what they think a good match might be for either a group of towns or a larger region, and whether or not the advice would be to perhaps wait and let it lapse for perhaps a year where it falls to basic service, and then have a greater advantage coming into a program whenever they feel that the bidding time is correct.
Okay. Greg, what is the right way for us to resolve that procurement question? I mean, we can ask MAPC, but, I think that we may want to involve Gloucester's procurement officer or something.
Yeah, I can definitely try to, as I'm just kind of thinking about action items, as well as maybe try to start a discussion with Donna Compton to see if there's any guidance that she can get in terms of whether that's, something by reviewing the existing contract that we have with Good Energy, and whether it provides for that. It may have provided for an extension or renewal. So I think that's kind of question number one.
Okay. Well, I would certainly be in favor of us starting that conversation with Donna Compton as soon as possible.
Yep.
And double checking the existing contract. If it's as simple as the fact that we have the right to extend for another, 1 or 2 years under the original procurement, then, that may be the wisest thing to do.
Yep.
And of course, the point that you made, if the market is not favorable, to take advantage of an extension at this point, we have the option of lapsing. And, I hate to do that, partly because, every time that you stop, it may get harder to start again.
Yeah.
But, still, we need to pursue that question aggressively now.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to think of what the appropriate venue is. It could be the Clean Energy Commission. It could be elevating it to a council presentation, sometime before it gets too close, maybe, having Stefano come back, talk about the performance of the program, and really try to maybe have a little bit more public engagement. I mean, it would be great to hear people say, see what the result was, whether they were happy with it, what were the challenges with it, and whether or not they're interested in us continuing to try to pursue it. Obviously there's the renewable energy benefit associated with it, but it has performed. It's not a lot of money for an individual household, but $100 is $100, and it means, it means a lot to maybe more people than others. But those, to get that feedback of moving forward and engaging the council again. It's most of the work is being done by the aggregator. But again, if everybody tallied the calls that they responded to over the years, and whether or not people are comfortable with the approach, there was a lot of objection to the opt-out nature of it. But so I think we need to do some outreach on that as well.
Mhm. Greg, do you think that we should just decide today that whether to have Good Energy make a presentation at the next CEC meeting, or immediately go to the council meeting level?
I think it makes sense more for you guys to connect with them. I mean, if it's first, we could tackle the issue of the procurement issue, and then when it makes sense to schedule the next meeting, it might make sense to have them come in.
Okay.
John, you looked like you were gesturing.
Yeah, I just think that, I'm a big believer in getting the elected folks involved in this as early as possible, because aren't they going to have to make a decision about whether the city goes forward with this or not? And things in government, I've been working in government as long as you have, Greg, and things in government move in geologic time. And I just think that getting them at least aware right away that this contract is expiring this year. We are now into 2021. We're 3 months into 2021, and with all the COVID stuff and how meetings have been slowed down and all that other stuff, I maybe there's a parallel path to go on here with.
Yeah, I think one of the things would probably be, we need this group right here to be really informed about how it's been performing. So that's a meeting, with Stefano, answering some of these questions about what the options are, and then maybe scheduling some time on a council agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will take responsibility for trying to line up Stefano for our next meeting.
Okay.
So that we can begin that dialogue. Now, Linda Brayton, your hand is up.
Yeah. One of the things I remember from our last go around of getting this set up, Good Energy was great about saying, this isn't a good time to start this. We'll wait until the next national grid rate. And I don't know how much that would come into play in the future, but I do remember they were extremely good about not letting us get into something when the rate was not going to be
Favorable
to us. The second thing is one of our guests is Councilor Holmgren, who's on the Planning and Development Committee. So she's listening to this.
Good.
So we've got to start with the council by one of the people on the correct committee, that subcommittee. She can say something if she wants, I think. Or she might later.
Deborah Darby, I saw your hand was up too. So let me just quickly see if you had something to add.
Yeah, I just had a real simple question about what was the end of our contract? When does that expire? What
December
month?
31st, 2021. Okay. Jen, if I can't see your face on my screen, but would you like to say anything, Jen Holmgren? I don't get any response there, so.
Hi, hello,
Oh,
can you guys hear me?
Now we can.
Hi, Jen Holmgren, 385 Magnolia Avenue. Hello, everybody. This is so
Hello.
exciting. I am listening. I am so happy to see all your faces, and I'm awfully glad that you're back. I'm excited that hopefully you'll be able to hook up with Sal DiStefano for the next meeting. And I'm, as a personal consumer of the aggregation program, I'm excited about it. I know that I've had some feedback about it from constituents that hasn't been so positive, but I think that there is a level of education that we need to outreach that we need to provide to the community as well. And with everybody's helter-skelter pandemic lives, that's been a huge challenge. So I do really appreciate everything that you've been doing. And I'm going to keep listening, and whatever I can do to help advocate for this program, I'm very happy to. I think that it's been well worth it. So thank you.
Thank you, Jen. All right. Greg, do you want to move on through your items? Hello. Whoops. Now I've suddenly lost my sound.
Greg, you're still on mute.
The only person I can hear right now is John.
Rookie move. Sorry, when I switched over to the presentation, I dropped out.
Oh, okay.
It's amazing. It's this month. We've been doing this for a year, and this month I've done that more than I think I've done the entire last year. So under the heading of climate change adaptation, mitigation, and resilience, I kind of wanted to just update you on some of the activities since last you've met.
Okay.
So Green Communities, the last grant that we had was to conduct activities at Gloucester High School from an efficiency perspective. So we had a LED retrofit at the high school that included, I believe, the gymnasium, several hallways. They're now on sensors so that they're not in operation 24/7. They are motion sensor, so they kind of light the way in the evening, which is will result in the savings and also the efficiency of the new fixtures. So that was completed in the spring of last year. And what took a little bit longer because of COVID was the EMS work, and that was really kind of scheduled to be initiated kind of as things really hit the fan. So there was a big delay in them actually conducting some of that work, but that was completed in the fall. We did submit the annual reporting because of the timing of the completion of the project. The funding from the Green Communities Program is now kind of scarce, given how many communities are in the program. So even before the submission of the last grant, we were kind of given the heads up in the pre-RFR stage that you should be looking for introducing either matching funds to a project or really starting to think about capping things at around $100,000. And so we were fortunate to have funding in the form of rebates from past projects that we specifically had the treasurer's office and the council approve allocating specifically to beget additional energy efficiency projects. So we used a portion of that funding as match to complete those two projects. But again, they are being very precise in terms of setting deadlines, I think in some ways to try to limit and make sure that more of the funding is being spread around to more of the communities. This will be the first grant round that we will not be eligible to apply. So that's why I've put on here National Grid programs, efficiency funding. So we do have some seed funding for projects, and Public Works and myself will have a meeting with our National Grid rep to see what the opportunities are for things like on-bill financing projects, which kind of just roll the potential savings from a project right into the billing, or it's financed right out of the billing. Also looking potentially at signing on to demand response, where we can kind of commit to shut down certain facilities if we have the flexibility to do that, in high demand periods, which results in a significant savings to the community. And I wanted to just mention charging stations because I've also been, seeing people kind of send around. There is a grant round right now for charging stations. We did receive a grant for last year. The Public Works Department has been pulled in a lot of different directions with COVID. We were not able to install the charging station at the high school, and they currently don't have the capacity for the construction project for this season either. So that's not something that will be pursued on the municipal side, but there has been interest and actually, I believe, permitting for some private stations. One that's slated to go up in Gloucester Crossing. I believe Tesla is interested in putting in a bank of charging stations up there. So that's where there's a little bit of a partnership. Obviously, we operate 3 municipal charging stations throughout the city, one at the annex, one downtown in the harbor lot, and then one in front of City Hall. And it's nice to see that, the private side is starting to respond to the market as well, in putting them in other private developments. So that's kind of a summary of green communities. And I don't know if you have any questions about where we are with that. Otherwise, I'll move on.
Greg, I just have one quick question, and that is on the charging stations. If we located other grant programs that had money for charging stations, is it possible to install those privately, or does DPW have to be dedicating some of their scarce labor and time to it?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of the electrical work is usually done by an electrician on call. That's part of a DPW contracting. And then typically the site work associated with it is also falls to the municipality. So I don't think it's just necessarily a, throw money at it and it gets solved. I think
Okay.
it's just a resource issue.
Okay, understood. Carry on.
So from an infrastructure standpoint, and this is, maybe less directly, I think it's in your ordinance somewhere that you're also, involved in climate change issues. And just to give people a sense of what we've been doing on the construction side of things. Several years ago, we had a feasibility and design grant to look at vulnerable pump stations as a part of the wastewater collection system, and what could be done to prepare them for future flooding conditions. So those are now being realized in construction with the rehab of several stations in the Good Harbor Beach area, and also I believe on the Wheelers Point area. This involves raising electrical panels above future flood elevations, as well as installing gasketed covers to avoid any potential infiltration during flooding events. It sounds like a small thing. It's a pretty critical thing because you lose your wastewater and things get very ugly very quickly. We successfully applied for a EDA grant last summer. I remember filing it while I was on vacation with the help of GL Cahill. We had dueling laptops. So we were successfully awarded a $3.5 million grant from EDA to help fund the construction of a flood mitigation project at the wastewater treatment plant. Again, not only critical because of its position in the floodplain or near the floodplain, but also we have one wastewater treatment plant. It's pretty essential. So that will probably go to construction late spring or this summer. We have done a feasibility for the Gloucester High School campus and have a design for a flood mitigation project there. Been a little bit unsuccessful just because of a mismatch of the size of the project cost with what some of the grant opportunities that are out there have available statewide. But we will be applying again, and we think we have a good match for that one as well. So hopefully that's something we'll receive some good news about later in the spring. So that's infrastructure perspective. From a planning perspective, there's a lot of a movement to try to start to integrate what we've learned from the climate change vulnerability assessment and the MVP process into other planning efforts. So the Open Space and Recreation Committee has been meeting kind of on and off over the last year remotely. We've had a couple of issues with, we are partnered with MAPC, and they've had some staffing issues as well to continue to support this effort. So hopefully we're going to be getting kind of a reboot on that in the next month. And one of the themes that will be a part of that will also be, how open space plan and open space planning and acquisition can be a part of resiliency strategies. Essex County Greenbelt kind of conducted a Cape Ann, and actually probably their entire footprint, but provided specialized data to all the Cape Ann communities about what they see as open space priorities through the lens of resiliency. So that's another data point that we can use in that open space planning process. Just prior to COVID, through an MVP grant, we conducted a watershed and water supply vulnerability assessment. So it kind of looked at what future conditions might mean, rainfall and flooding for our public water supply, the reservoir system, and also how water is distributed throughout the community. Again, another good one to be utilized in looking at how we potentially have to protect and preserve watershed lands. Upcoming this spring, actually being conducted right now, we're in a partnership with Coastal Zone Management that's looking specifically at resiliency strategies for DPA properties. They've selected 2 pilot locations for this effort, City of Gloucester and Chelsea, and looking at what the challenges and opportunities might be for properties on the waterfront, which will feed into harbor planning process that's kicking off this late spring. We currently have an RFP out for consulting services to assist in that, supported by a Seaport Economic Council grant. And so it will provide a little bit more focus on how we can utilize the information we have about the risk in and around the harbor, and how you can translate that into protection and economic development. So there's a MVP grant round right now that'll be coming out this April, and we're in discussions with various departments on what might be the best candidate project for that. So that's planning efforts.
Fantastic.
If there's any questions on that, I'll keep moving. I'm on a roll.
Greg, what does DPA stand for?
The designated port area. So
thank you.
so mostly the western side of the harbor, running from Cape on Ice to the Fish Pier, and then there are a couple of isolated properties on the other side of the harbor that are included as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Onward.
And lastly, from a policy perspective, we will be working with MAPC later this spring on looking at a revised floodplain management ordinance. There's been Jen Holmgren's here where we've been doing a lot of work on housing and where we want to encourage housing. And the flip side is, where we may want to discourage housing in areas that are of higher risk. So we have a fairly simple ordinance right now that's fairly out of date. And we will be working with the knowledge that MAPC has gathered with working with a number of other communities to have some discussions about what that might mean for Gloucester. And I left this last one on here. I know this is perhaps a nexus with what you might identify as some priority work for the coming months. Is where we last left off. There was some discussion about a solar ordinance, and I thought that maybe that might be using the Clean Energy Commission agenda as a way to maybe have some public outreach about what people's thoughts and ideas are around potential large field solar installations. The ordinance part is not too challenging. There's a lot of models out there, but introducing that as a land use, in a greenfield development scenario is something that I think there probably needs some engagement around. Obviously, everyone knows the benefits of renewable energy, but in some instances, when it comes at the cost of clearing a green field, there's a discussion to be had. So, and I think that's all I had on agenda item number 1 in 5 parts.
Let me just ask one question on the
Sure.
large field solar. Do we have any options in Gloucester that are brownfield, as in instead of converting a beautiful green open space to a solar field, do we have any areas where it would be essentially reclaiming a site that is already a problem site?
Yeah, I think of the few sites that probably would qualify for brownfield, I think what we would typically do is be more inclined to try to secure funding or potentially work with Mass Development to conduct cleanup efforts, so that we can kind of try to return the site to something productive that might be a job creator or create job opportunity. I'm not sure that we have anything that rises to the level of being completely obsolete for any other use. And there's a whole question of scale of as it's what is it, about 5 acres per megawatt? I think that's what it takes. So there's it's a pretty large footprint for the type of return that you might so that's why you see them very, very large. So that's, I mean, again, another consideration in if it's something that the commission feels that should be pursued. That's maybe some of the discussion, or what are the opportunities, the where, and whether or not that's something that typically if that's an option, we would very often have someone knock on the door and say, hey, what do you guys think about this? Come forward with a project idea first, and then kind of figure out whether or not there's a path. I have not had most of the contacts that I've had have been more associated with municipal roof. I think you've had some contacts on that as well, and less about kind of large ground mounted solar installations.
Mm-hmm. And just in response to your point that both of us have had approaches from some companies that are interested in the projects, there's a company called Solect, which had reached out to me and Greg, to you too, to
Yep.
try and gather some information to see if there was a proposal that they might be able to make to the city. John Moskal had made a very good point, which is that before we consider those things, we have to think about whether any of these opportunities are limited by whatever capacity the city has to be involved in net metering projects.
Right.
The net metering cap, in other words.
Yep.
And I think that many of us on the CEC have struggled, to fully understand how that applies to some of the kinds of proposals that we've been hearing. And I would like to make a priority of trying to get a little more clarity on that in the next couple of meetings. And maybe get a good explanation of the kinds of projects that we could take on and those that we cannot take on because
Yep.
of metering limits.
Yep.
John Moskal, do you want to comment on that at all?
Sure. I think part of this is, there's a little bit of a chicken and egg element here, and it's hard for developers to come in and even look and propose something if there's no ordinance that would allow them to do it. And so I think with several of the the predecessors that we had on city staff that were assisting us, the idea of just having an ordinance on the books was something that they felt had some value, because you needed to have that in order to turn any project into any viability. I think the issues that you brought up, Candace, still exist. The city accounts are obligated right now to the wind turbines. The residential small business accounts are all part of the community aggregation project. So, any ground mounted solar project that would come in here would be an individually financed merchant project where you have a solar developer trying to sell power to other customers. And so, you know, the benefit to the city in that sense is as a landlord. You know, you're getting some, you know, some stable annuity type income for hosting a solar site. But, you know, right now we don't have the energy appetite for it, given the existing contractual statuses of everything that's there. But, you know, there might be some opportunity to turn unused property into you know, some sort of revenue generator that could provide renewables to somebody else.
Mhm, mhm.
I would just say too, I agree with John, is that well, outside of grain and ground rent, we can, you know, municipal buildings are a good idea, canopies are a good idea, but again, you can go around the net metering cap by doing a standalone facility for solar generation. But again, that falls back into what John was saying, whereas you need an investor to invest in that and ultimately collect revenue from it. So again, you're being kind of a host unless, you know, we can somehow have funding for something like that.
Mhm. Well, one question for the CEC would be whether we want to, you know, have one of the companies that has approached the city, which is Solect, you know, come and talk to the CEC and describe what it is that they think they could do. They've apparently had projects in a number of other municipalities whose circumstances may or may not be similar to ours.
Yeah, I would say, Candace, that before we have any conversation like that, we should notify them of the fact that you know, the city accounts are tied up contractually with the wind turbines that the town is hosting, and that you know, we're locked into an aggregation contract for others for another year. And if any of those two things are necessary for them to proceed, there's no sense having a conversation with them at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been kind of very reluctant, and I keep reminding people of that, as you know, we've been contacted from, you know, there was a large solar installation, I think in Haverhill about 2 years ago, that, you know, they're looking for a large off taker to, you know, to be that you know, municipal partner that has the big municipal load. And, you know, there's a lot of flexibility now. You don't actually have to be potentially in the same, you have to be in the same load area. That's all it is. You don't have to be in the same community. So, you know, and the answer is no. You know, we can't do it. We're pretty committed, unless, you know, we could be in a unique situation. If National Grid was to say, yes, at the end of the day, we will write you a check rather than give you credits, which is the agreement that we have right now. We actually get reimbursed. We don't get credited. It's very unique. They took that approach because we have so many different accounts, and they didn't want to have to try to distribute what was being generated across 37 accounts at a percentage of what was coming out of the turbine production. So, you know, for the time being, unless something changes, or we could get some sort of agreement from National Grid, we really don't have the ability to get involved in another net metered project.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, sorry to cut you off, Kenneth.
Go ahead.
How long are what's the contract term for the wind turbines?
So it's a 25-year term. And
So-
we're in, I have no idea. It feels like it was a long time ago.
2012.
Yeah, we're probably year 8 or 9 of it, something like that. I mean, there's a long time left.
Yeah.
Yep.
I will say, I think last year was the highest year of production yet.
Wow, that's
That was
fantastic.
promising, and it just about matched the municipal load.
Wow, that's great.
One quick question, Greg. You know, we're obviously talking about the solar ordinance, but some of these other topics under your 1D here, where CEC can best provide support to the city. Are there other areas within green communities, infrastructure planning, as well as policy, where there might be some other
Well,
areas?
I mean, again, there's a little bit of a complication, as John has pointed out, whether, you write it and they will come. What really trying to understand a little bit better of what the potential opportunity for any type of solar option out there. That would be kind of a first question, whether or not you then pursue, developing an ordinance around it. I think, maybe this hasn't happened because of some of those limitations. If at this point, most of the projects that are moving forward are still, looking for that large off-taker or potentially, municipal land in a lease situation, there's just a lot of variables there that probably, again, I don't know that there's a real, itch you're trying to scratch there in terms of generating an ordinance around it. In my mind, I think the most important thing, and again, you're going to get into your discussion about other things that you've been thinking about and think could be a benefit to the city. From my perspective, the aggregation is kind of issue number one. And, that is something that collectively, needs a lot of attention to try to get to a resolution of what we're going to do next.
We hear you, and we will certainly be focusing on that.
Yep.
Greg?
Yep.
I so appreciate where you're coming from. Okay, I really do. I just was remembering though that wasn't there some small solar project ordinance that was drafted by Matt Coogan and even Jeremy Price way back that didn't
so
private people and so forth?
Jeremy and I worked on one. There's a state model, but again, you can only write a good ordinance after you've had some discussion around the parameters of what you're trying to create it for. The where, can it be? Do you want to try to promote anywhere it's an option, or are there places that you would avoid zoning for it? Is it, preference towards, as Candace pointed out, potentially a brownfield opportunity? It does happen, but again, I think the limited sites that we have, we try to, partner on a cleanup and, development of some sort of industry or commercial use that would be a job creator over just having a static, site that's generating energy. So I think it's not just so there are models out there, and there was some discussion about that. And I think maybe even Greg Jones may have had some interaction with the commission about a solar ordinance. But again, I think that you have to kind of start with the premise of what are we trying to solve before we can really start to develop it.
Believe me, I wasn't suggesting we put it on the front burner. I was just trying to remember what it.
Oh, no. And I'm happy to, again, I think that's why it's kind of been sitting there for a couple of years, because unless there's somebody that's got a, idea around it, or we really think that there's a huge advantage to putting it in place, you just got to understand what the potential is there and then the where.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I
John.
think the issue that keeps coming up in all of these meetings is this idea of a community solar project. And, I'm always the wet blanket on this, saying, there's no market for it. But, the idea is that we should, in order for something like that to go forward in any capacity, you have to have an ordinance, for that. So that was the source of the chicken and egg comment that I brought up earlier.
Okay, let me just mention that over the course of the last year, another company that I had heard from was Honeywell, who was posing the question of whether Gloucester would have any interest in any further ESCO type projects, which would be performance contracting, where opportunities would be found to do renovations and efficiency work that would be paid for from the savings that were garnered by having those things installed. Way back when we last visited that question, the Public Works Department had already developed working relationships with Siemens and some other companies. And they basically weren't very interested in the idea of partnering with any other companies at that time. I think we'd been approached by Amoresco, which was one of the companies that was looking for municipal work. Greg, do you have the sense of whether there's any appetite for any further performance contracting type projects, or are we pretty much?
So, my let me just make sure, did I unmute myself? Okay. My recollection was actually that, some of the, and I'm not sure what generation of lighting projects had already been conducted. When Amoresco kind of pulled their proposal together, a lot of the low-hanging fruit that they see savings from, I think, had already been conducted. And when we got into a discussion about, looking at the, the kind of, it was almost like an abacus. You could do these things, you could do these things. There were all these different options. And I think some of the concern at the time was actually with the CFO that you were spreading over, the financing of some things that were actually going to probably term in their useful life before the end of the term of the ESCO contract.
Mhm.
So, a complicated issue. Do I think it's always worth trying to explore? How do we get the mountain of work that needs to be done in these facilities to keep them up to date and modernized and longer living? Because every time we say we have a building that's going to have a useful life of 50 years, we use it for 100. I think it could be worthwhile. I mean, I haven't heard a lot of discussion about it, but we're doing, there's a lot of work that's being done that's clearly, triage work or response to failure. And then, there's the Green Communities program that we've been hitting very, targeted to projects. We know which buildings are the energy consumers. So they're the ones that make the most sense to focus on. They're also the ones that are going to probably be in commission for a longer period of time. But there is no holistic plan. We work with, Siemens and trying to think of the other energy, EMC, and they come up with solid ideas of what might make sense to do, but it's just not in a context of real prioritization of what you're going to have to think about for 5 years or 10 years. And I think that's potentially some of the advantage of having those industrial grade assessments to say, this is what you're really up against. But it's something I could take back to Mike Hale, see what his thoughts are about it. And maybe it's an option. I mean, it's been, how long ago was that discussion? Maybe 10 years ago?
Yeah, it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. So
And the treasurer at their CFO at the time, I believe Town was his name.
Jeff Town. Yep.
Jeff Town.
Yep.
He had a problem really getting a grip on how the whole program worked. But at the end of the day, it was the DPW folks who preferred to just go ahead and do it on their own and do piecemeal projects and do the 2-year turnaround on payment rather than committing to a program. And it is exactly what you said. We do not have a holistic plan, which is exactly what UNESCO puts together. So we really missed a lot over the last 10 years, including grants, because they do all the legwork for getting the grants that you need for projects and other money that's out there, money that we wouldn't even be aware of to even look for. And so, personally, I think it's definitely would have been a way to go. A lot of the low hanging fruit has been done over the last 10 years. But again, if you look forward, technology keeps changing and they're much more aware of what is out there than our own local folks can possibly be.
Well, I think I'm hearing that perhaps we should discuss performance contracting opportunities as an item on an upcoming CEC agenda.
Yeah, just as a reminder, that was a program that was through a procurement
Yep.
With MAPC.
Mhm.
So I don't know what is out there at the moment.
Yep.
Okay. Well, let's make a note of that as something to
Mhm.
explore in an upcoming meeting. And maybe we can find out about whether there are any other group procurements in that area
Yep.
that are going on. Okay.
My
Now-
last slide is your item number 2. I think I saw some email correspondence from some of the members. The council did adopt the the provision to enter into the property assessed clean energy program with Mass Development. There was some discussion, at that time. I think people are just kind of pulled in a lot of different directions, particularly the economic development director is focused more on a lot of the small grant programs and assisting businesses, through this, through the COVID crisis. But there was some discussion about trying to do some outreach, potentially with the chamber, to make folks aware of this and maybe position, some of the link and information on the city website through the business development page. It is very much, kind of run by Mass Development. The city is really just a pass through or collector of the, the payment on bill. And then that goes back to, the consultant involved in the development of a project with a private company. So it's mostly a function through the treasurer's office. John Dunn's aware of it. He reviewed it and provided, his opinion to the council as well, that it's something that they could accommodate. So, I don't know to the extent that Mass Development itself is doing outreach for the program. I think it's just kind of the timing right now. I'm not sure that this is, what folks are really focused on. But I think, that's something, perhaps, hopefully, as things start opening up this late spring and summer, that there'll be some engagement, maybe perhaps with the chamber on making folks aware of what the opportunity is in Gloucester.
Okay.
Okay, if I could, I did follow up with Mass Development over the past several days. And they actually, because I kept checking the website and couldn't find any projects. So they actually just got their first real project application that looks like it's going to go through. And it's out in Western Mass. And I spoke to, first with Wendy, I corresponded, Wendy O'Malley, who was on the call with us in August, the Zoom call. And also Dan Moraes, I spoke to. He's our Northern Region Manager. So they haven't had a lot of momentum yet either, but we did dust off the idea about them making a presentation to the Chamber of Commerce here. And they're certainly willing to do that anytime we let them know that that's available.
Okay.
And the other party in town who was interested initially was the EDIC folks. And I don't know, it may be worthwhile for a presentation to be done to them separately or in conjunction with the chamber.
Yeah, I think it probably makes sense to pull as many people with interest and also connection to the business community in one place.
Right.
Economize Mass Development's time and, get everybody in the room to hear any questions and kind of learn together.
Yeah. And what they've been developing, they being Mass Development, what they've been focusing on is also really getting the banks more educated on how the program works and looking for local banks within municipalities that have approved going forward with the program. And the incentive, the city doesn't have any involvement except that it's something else to offer businesses in the community. And, can potentially provide a competitive edge. So if you would like, we can put some dates together or contact the chamber and see how they want to go forward.
I'm wondering if that would be a good role for the CC.
Sure. I can also connect with Sal DiStefano as well as Tom Balfe. I think he's the current chair of the EIC. And we'll try to see what makes sense.
Okay.
I don't know if, maybe it might make sense to see what, the chamber's regular, kind of schedule for meetings might be with their membership to try to piggyback on that.
Mhm.
Right, and I mean, should they get a primer first to understand what the program's about? I don't know what background they have on CPACE,
Who should get a primer?
the chamber.
Oh, I thought maybe it's just, having mass development present to the large group.
Okay, all right.
I mean, hey, I'm not in control of the agenda, whatever you guys think, but I'm just thinking of trying to, line people up with, an opportunity for everybody to kind of hear it together.
Okay,
Okay. That would
I
be-
guess we can describe that as a group then, Candace?
Yes,
Okay.
whether that would be something that we could move forward on being an initiator of
Mhm.
that kind of a discussion.
Okay,
Now, the question would be whether tonight we're just kind of coming up with the items that we'll discuss in more detail in our next meeting, or whether we want to ask the group tonight about their point of view on, whether we should plan to play that role of being a convener on the subject of getting CPACE onto the screen of our EDIC and Chamber of Commerce colleagues. Any members have a sense of whether they'd like to see us vote on something like this tonight, or have tonight's meeting just be to introduce the subjects that we'll address at our next meeting in more detail?
I have a comment.
Yes.
When this was first put forward to the council, it actually was Councilor Cox that just brought it to the council, and we kind of became aware of it. But at the time, the thought was, well, this is a good thing, but there wasn't any particular need for CEC to put a lot of time and energy into it, because there are so many other entities that are already much more in line with that particular program. That the city, as Greg has said, is just a pass through. And it's a good thing for the business community, but it seems to me that we have several things that are much more in line with what we can do, and that this would be something that Chamber or EDIC or whatever, any of those groups would be better fitted to do it. And maybe Greg just talks to EDIC or whoever and says, does anybody want to take it on? But I don't think we're the most appropriate lead for this.
okay, if I could just make one comment, Linda, actually, we started working on it in 2016.
Oh, yeah, but when it actually went forward.
And that's when, we originally met with, we being Bob Myers at the time too. And I went and met with Jeff Rashawn as example, as one of the developers in town. And, we got people geared up and they were looking forward to it. And then mass development took another 4 years, or 3.5 years to get it.
No, I agree. We've been historically watching it and looking
Right.
it
and-
over every so often.
Okay, I guess it was just something advantageous because it is tied to energy savings. That's the whole point of the program. It's just not a finance program. That we originally looked at it as a beneficial in our mission also.
All right. But it looks like somebody else is able to do it, and it is a financing thing at this point. So anyway, if we need to put it off for one of the conversations for another meeting, that probably makes some sense.
Just given that I think we have limited time tonight, if our meeting is going to last an hour and a half, which is the typical length of the Zoom meetings, it's now 9:15. And I think we did want to be able to spend a little bit of time on items 3 and 4 on the
Yeah,
agenda.
we have 2 people here that actually came because of items 3 and
Yes.
4. That would
And
be Linda Knapp.
I'd like to take them out of order. I
Yeah.
would like to take number 4 first.
Yeah.
Which is to discuss the support of net zero stretch building code legislation, and whether the city of Gloucester, should sign on, as apparently about 55 other communities in Massachusetts have, to support the adoption of a net zero stretch energy code.
So
And
if I could-
Linda, you were prepared to comment on that.
Yeah, I just want to give a little introduction and possibly pull in Amanda Nash and Jen Holmgren, who have been
Okay.
involved in this too. So stretch code issue, the net zero issue, is part of the omnibus climate bill, which is the huge bill that the governor vetoed. Then he sent back to the legislature with amendments, right now, one of the big sticking points on that whole bill is the stretch code.
Mhm.
And what's happened is that the affordable housing folks, realtors and so forth, are kind of seem to be in opposition to the energy folks,
Mhm.
the energy efficiency buildings and so forth. Candace, I think you went to the webinar too, but there was a webinar that showed reasons why these two things were not in opposition. I think we can guess what they are. You know, if there's energy efficiency on the buildings, and that helps the price of the real estate and so forth. But anyway, there are arguments pro and con. However, at this point in time, the legislature again has it with the amendments, and there's a lot of push from the environmentalist folks to get it through, number one, but number two, to hang on to the stretch code. Amanda Nash brought this particular petition to my attention, to some other people's attention, like Councilor Holmgren got a letter about it too. There is a petition which you mentioned, I think it was, I counted again, I had miscounted, it was 57 communities that had signed onto it in one way or another as of February 4th. The issue that came up, first of all, Amanda raised with me is, could they particularly want municipal employees, whether that's paid or unpaid, so we're unpaid ones, to sign. And in fact, everybody on the list has got some specific municipal connection. So just to be on the absolute safe side, I double checked with the city clerk's office and the mayor's office. We cannot, none of us cannot in any way, shape or form endorse anything with Clean Energy Commission connection to us by ourselves. Even if there's a committee, we all decided we were going to do it, we can't do it. It has to go to Greg, and he knows about it now, and so does Candace, and the legal office and so forth and so forth. However, some of the councilors or any officials could, as in their own personal role, or the council as a whole, could endorse this, the letter that's the petition, which I sent to you folks, I don't know, several days ago to look over. Is a very good laying out of the information in that document. So we're at the point, I think it seems to me, and I've discussed it with Councilor Holmgren a little bit, it's possible this would be the sort of thing that would go through as a full council vote, which doesn't involve all kinds of public hearing and a lot more activity, which probably puts it into some other fiscal year or who knows what. Jen has already reached out to some of the council leadership and to legal, just informing them of the fact that this exists. So I don't know whether maybe Jen wants to say something.
Well, I just wanted to add too, as Candace and I were discussing the agenda, I also thought it was an appropriate thing, to be placed on your agenda also to advise the administration. The mayor is also being asked to sign on, and she wanted to better understand it and understand a discussion from you folks that have been tracking it as well, and a little bit of discussion of what the sticking points are, potentially how far it goes. I'm not sure what type of arguments have been made in terms of the additional cost it might result in a development proposal. The governor has obviously been extremely strong on housing development, and that seems to be probably where kind of the nexus is as we try to continue to meet that demand and crisis in the region and in the state, whether or not this is something that he also supports because of the potential development cost associated with it. We know that the first stretch code that was adopted when we became a green community, there was a lot of concern around that from the development community. At the end of the day, it is a development cost. There's a HERS rater that has to go in pre and post and ensure that it meets the energy code that's now commonplace. It was just a couple of years ahead of time. So it's kind of the same discussion of moving it further and raising the standard, and whether or not it's something to support at this time.
One of the other documents I believe I sent out to for information only to the members. That was from the Mass Municipal Association. There was a short article about this particular issue. And it does a nice job of laying out the situation as far as the legislature is concerned. But I wanted just to make one point here. The legislature, here's where it stands right now. And this is as of March. The legislature now has the option to take a vote to override the governor's proposed amendments or to make adjustments to the bill. The bill passed by 144 to 14 vote in the House and a clear vote in the Senate, voice vote in the Senate, indicating a level of support needed for a veto override, but legislative leaders are continuing to negotiate with the administration over differences between their approaches. So it really is not clear whether or not this is going to go fast or slow or whatever, but that is where it stands right now. This whole thing could happen without us while we're talking about it. I mean, who knows? But anyway, Amanda might have a better idea of what these folks that have drawn this petition together are thinking in terms of sending in the signatures, however many they've got, to the governor. Jen
Okay.
maybe could comment on the different processes that might be involved with city council. And yes, certainly the administration would like to hear from us in greater detail.
Before we go any further, I do want to check with Greg and whatever the powers that be that are hosting this meeting about the fact that we're now at 5 minutes of 9. Is there a hard cutoff at an hour and a half? Okay. So I think that it would make sense, since we have Jen and Amanda Nash present, to have a little bit of further comment on what it is that, I mean, you've basically said that the CEC can't act either as individuals or as a board to support this. It's got to be the
We
city
can only
council.
advise
Yeah.
our betters.
Okay.
What we can do, there are other groups, Environmental Mass and Climate Exchange and some others. We could sign as individuals on some of those petitions because they're not looking for us to be municipal. We cannot ever use our names with the title
Okay.
to speak for the group or the city, no matter
Well,
what.
let's hear from Jen, if possible, on what her view is of this, whether the city council, is interested in pursuing a vote on this, and whether they would like to have the CEC, give them some advice one way or the other.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Candace, and thanks everyone once again. Yes, I'm very interested, and I did confer with Council President LeBlanc, and he said he'd be very open to putting it on an agenda at some point. I was excited about it, so I feel like I sort of jumped the gun because it's important to me to have a recommendation from this commission. It will give us the background that we need to sign on to this measure, but I do feel that it's very important as a green community for us to show the leadership that other municipalities have shown in signing on to it. So I want to thank you all for considering reviewing and recommending it to the council formally. And I also want to thank Amanda Nash for bringing it forward.
I agree with you that, it's important to bring it forward. And I also appreciate the effort that's gone into reaching out to all the communities. Thank you, Amanda, for being part of that. So I'm just trying to figure out, given the time that we have this evening, whether the CEC feels that they are ready to make a recommendation on this. I think that this would require a roll call vote of our membership if we're going to proceed right to the question of whether we're prepared to support that initiative tonight, or whether whether we just don't have a consensus at this point. Any comment from other board members on whether we should proceed to a vote on this?
Well, this is Linda, has there been any analysis to compare, what the costs are to developers, as example, versus, the net zero stretch code versus the existing stretch code? I mean, how do we address that issue? Even when we first worked on the stretch code to begin with, to become a green community, there was pushback on that. And we spent the time to, meeting with the folks in the industry to explain it all to them. I don't know that we have answers to those questions yet.
The document that I circulated has a lot of that information in it. I do think we need to take at least this month for we as individuals to look this over. I don't, John is going to have a lot to say about it, I know, because he knows this stuff. But I don't think we should take a vote tonight. Certainly, we're not in a position to do that.
I think that's where I
The
am.
councilors can actually vote. The councilors, or the mayor, whoever, can also, as individuals, endorse this thing. But it would be stronger if they all did, I guess. But they'd still like to have our input, I'm sure.
Okay, John, would you like to comment?
Sure. I guess I'm not opposed to giving input to the council on this. I don't think we should be voting on this tonight because I, for one, haven't read a damn thing about this. And so anything I'm saying is going to be completely uninformed. And so I think it warrants us taking some time to, read through this stuff and get a sense of where we each individually stand on it so we can make an informed recommendation to the council as to whether or not they should endorse it.
Okay, and Sam, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I definitely don't think we should vote on it yet either. I did look through some of the stuff that Linda, you sent around, and I didn't find anything really super specific. That could be that I missed something. It was kind of using a lot of vague terminology, and I'm always a little bit fearful on stuff like this. And then we can say, yes, it's great for green building and it's great for stuff, but then as Linda mentioned, you don't know what expenses you're actually creating. Building codes are constantly kind of developing and changing in ways that are making things more expensive for everyone, whether it's people getting work done in their house and people and contractors doing the work. So it's I'm not against more green building. I'm avidly for it, but the terminology and how these things are done, I think the specifics of it is very important to look at.
Well, it sounds to me as
volunteer
though,
to read the whole bill. There's some, I think we just, we got to, if anybody comes up with,
You should read the whole bill. If you're gonna pass along an endorsement to it, you should know it pretty well, right?
well, I think we can probably do our own, extra reading, certainly. I don't think we have to read the whole bill, but there's information that we can get on this argument. There's, there's other stuff around to look at.
Totally. I just think there's a lot, when it comes down to it, we can say that these things are great for changing the future of construction for a greener future. Yes, but and you can look at something on a large scale and say, yeah, that's a good thing overall. But without looking at the details, you don't know actually the monetary effects of how it's going to affect the community.
right.
Yep.
Well, it sounds fairly clear. We're not going to vote on this tonight. We are going to put it on the agenda for our next meeting and hope that we can all take a look at the materials that have been provided to us in order to be ready for a discussion of that at the next meeting. So at this point, maybe we should take a moment on the status of the Future Act, which was one of the things that we did when we last met almost a year ago. That is one of the last things that we had accomplished was.
Candace?
Yes.
I want to recognize that Amanda also has.
Okay. Oops, you just froze, Greg.
Amanda probably wants to comment. In particular, I'd like to hear if she knows how much more time we have on this particular petition.
Okay.
Amanda might want to say other things.
Amanda, can you address us, please? I see raised hand.
Unmute.
Amanda, are you mute?
Greg's frozen.
Uh-oh. And that's not just frozen to me up in Vermont, it's frozen to all of you too.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Sam, are you frozen or are you just not moving?
Hi,
Ah, perfect.
Bravo.
I'm actually texting with Amanda and she says they have to unmute me. I can't do it. I actually don't know how to do that, but she says,
I think the host has to, so it's
Yeah.
either Greg or Candace has to unmute.
okay.
And I don't have hosting privileges. It's Greg
Oh,
and
no.
Shelley Cialino that are
Yeah,
doing.
Greg looks like he dropped off.
Uh-oh.
Candace, you are the host now. He made you host.
Maybe
All right,
it
I'm
really
gonna-
does cut off at 9. Or Greg does.
Oh, God.
Okay.
No,
So-
he'll come back. He dropped off before. Amanda's saying it's likely that the stretch code thing will be over within a week or two. Uh-oh.
Oh, well then that's,
Well, I still think that we're not in a position to advise the
Oh,
city
yeah,
on this
no,
tonight.
no.
So I think we may just have to pass.
Okay.
If it's going to be over within a week.
Okay, so she says further, she's saying the governor has already sent back his amendment and the House legislature needs to override.
Okay.
Okay, I thought there was more time. Okay, she says there's no actual date, but it's likely.
oh, just to put what the MMA said about it. And again, this was a March issue. As the new legislative session only began in early January, there is no immediate timetable for further action on the climate bill now that the governor has returned the bill to the legislature. So well, Amanda may have more current knowledge in that they really have negotiated and reached an agreement.
Gotcha. Okay.
This,
Oh, man.
well,
All right.
so we'll send out an email to apprise of whether or not this is actually done and gone.
That sounds, all right. I'm sorry. One more thing, and then I'll shut up. She says they're supposed to override, but they don't know when that's going to be.
Yeah,
Okay.
so this still is a time frame that it's possible it matters and it's possible it doesn't matter.
Okay. All
So
right,
in other
thank
words,
you.
we don't know. So maybe we just try to do a little homework and see what happens.
Okay, yep, she's saying right. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
But it is possible it's going to be hung up, till June, and we will have been sorry we didn't say something,
True. Okay.
but
Okay.
so it always is, right?
Now, just because
Future.
Greg has departed and named me host doesn't mean that I know a thing about how to, actually do things like close the meeting out. But we did have one more quick update that we wanted to do.
I can tell you the Future Act and.
Okay, and then what I'd like to do is discuss when our next meeting would be and whether people want to switch from Thursdays to Wednesdays, which I think is better for John Moskell. And it's fine as far as I'm concerned, but others may have some points they want to make on that. So Linda, would you just
Yeah.
update us on the status of the Future Act stuff?
I looked the status up on the Senate and House websites, and it was referred to the Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy back on January 22nd, 2019. And it was there until November 25th, 2020, when the session ended without them doing, making any, I don't know whether they made any progress, but it didn't go through. And now the last date on these two, on both the Senate and the House, is January 5th, 2021, and it says no further action taken. So apparently it's sitting there.
Okay, so at this point, I mean, we've already, as a city,
Did our
expressed
thing,
our
yeah.
support for the idea of it. It doesn't imply that there's any further action needed on our part.
Yeah, I agree. And
We've taken
also,
our action.
presumably they will take action at some point, but they haven't, they're probably doing COVID related stuff just like the rest of us. I don't know. But anyway, that's where it stands right now. It's been moved into the next session.
Okay. All right. Let's just talk about a next meeting date, and then I think we will close. And if any of you who are more seasoned Zoom hosts than I know what we do next. Oh, wait, I see Greg's face just turned up here again.
Greg is back on, so you don't have to worry about anything.
Oh, good. Thank you, Greg. So as far as I'm concerned, we could meet, again later this month if people feel the need to catch up, or we can bump into April. But I would like to suggest that we switch to Wednesday nights in order to make it more workable for John to participate, unless any of the rest of you have a problem with Wednesday nights. So speak up if that is a problem. Otherwise, let's find ourselves a Wednesday in, does the commission feel that it wants to meet again late in March to try to pursue some of these subjects further? Any comment from any of our members?
Let's do it. And then we might have to postpone because we don't have a quorum.
Well, that's possible.
Plan A, and then we go to Plan B.
Okay. So the remaining Wednesdays in March are Wednesday, the 17th, Wednesday, the 24th, and Wednesday, the 31st. Would people be willing to reconvene on Wednesday, the 24th?
That's 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Sure. I mean,
I'll just let you know I'm out of town that week, so you're gonna have to drive yourself.
Well, let's put it off a week then. I think, because some of what we need is Greg's support and figuring out, hopefully an update on staffing. And whether we're going to get a replacement for Jeremy to kind of, help the commission through some of this stuff.
Yep. Okay, Wednesday, the 31st.
It's fine with me.
Does that sound workable to those assembled here? All right, I will try to set up a meeting for that date. And we'll get back to all of you.
And Candace, just wanted to confirm, and your start times, what would you like to have a start time of?
It sounds like people prefer 7.
Okay.
Do I hear any objection to 7 o'clock on the 31st?
Do I hear 5 p.m.?
I don't mind, that either. But,
I'll jump in because I think I've been one of the people driving some of these schedule changes. As long as I'm telecommuting now and not going in and out of Boston every day, I've got a lot more flexibility to kind of, just go across the kitchen and sit at a computer.
So I was going to point out, I mean, there's been a tremendous slide into the early evening for most city business. Planning board starts at 5, subcommittees of the council start at 5:30, and the council starts at 6. So as long as everybody's, has that flexibility, it's entirely up to you, but I would just say that there's plenty of committees that have kind of come accustomed to that because they're either already home or they're home earlier. So it's up to you.
Greg,
I
I just want to
prefer
tell
earlier.
all the people how you were at the city council meeting last night from 6 o'clock to 10:45. And
Oh
here
my
you are, bright and sunny. So,
I
give the
I
guy a
actually
break.
I got off a little bit earlier than that, but
Okay.
it comes with the territory.
Yeah, well, and it wasn't exactly easy.
That's why you get paid the big bucks, Greg.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it.
That's right.
But anyway, give the guy a break when we can, huh?
does 5 o'clock on the 31st of March cause a problem for any of you?
No.
No,
I am not seeing anyone say no. Okay, 5 o'clock on March 31st is the date for our next meeting.
Okay.
And I will be working with Greg behind the scenes to just make sure that we pull off doing it the proper way. But the
Yep.
fact that we managed to have a meeting tonight shows that it's possible. So with any further comments from any member before we adjourn for the evening?
should we have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that I guess has to be a roll call vote.
So a motion to adjourn in a second.
I move we adjourn the meeting until.
All
the
right, I'll
31st.
second it.
Okay, roll call. Member Wheeler,
Aye.
Member Brayton,
Aye.
Member Darby,
Aye.
Member Moskal,
Aye.
Member Stout Sanders,
Yes, I.
and Member Zerbigo.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you
We'll
very much,
see you
everyone.
on the 31st.
It's been grand.
It has. Thank you and welcome back.
Have a good night.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
Greg.
Bye.
Bye.